The silver chains that bound her wrists rattled as she carried the tray of food across the cold stone floor. She moved with grace despite the heavy weight, her feet barely making a sound. Her golden eyes remained lowered, always careful never to meet the gaze of her masters. To do so was forbidden. She had been raised in servitude, shaped by a world that never gave her choices, only commands. The grand hall was filled with nobles, their laughter and chatter drowning out the soft whispers of the lesser servants. She moved between them like a shadow, unseen except when needed. Her existence was simple, to serve, to obey, to never question. But that night something changed. A new guest sat at the long banquet table, a man she had never seen before. He was not dressed in finery like the others, nor did he carry himself with arrogance. His eyes were kind, deep brown and filled with something she did not understand. He watched her as she poured wine into his goblet, and for the first time in her life, she felt the weight of a gaze that did not seek to command or belittle. It made her hands tremble. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice gentle. Her heart stopped. Servants were not asked their names. They were not acknowledged as individuals. She hesitated, unsure if it was a trick, if punishment would follow. "She does not have a name," one of the noblemen answered with a dismissive wave. "We do not name our property." The guest frowned. "She is not property. She is a person." The hall grew silent. Her masters exchanged glances, some amused, others annoyed. The noble who had spoken before chuckled. "Ah, you are one of those. A dreamer. You think you can change the way of things? She has been like this since birth. She knows nothing else. That does not mean she should remain in chains." Her breath hitched. Never, not once, had anyone spoken of freedom in her presence. The mere idea was dangerous, a whisper of rebellion that could lead to severe consequences. She wanted to step away, to become invisible again, but her feet would not move. Something inside her stirred, something unfamiliar and terrifying. "I will buy her freedom," the guest said firmly. "Name your price." The laughter that followed was cruel. "You are wasting your coin, my friend. What would you do with a creature like her? Give her a choice." A choice. The word echoed in her mind, foreign and strange. A choice to do what? To go where? She had never been outside the walls of the estate. The world beyond was a mystery, spoken of only in whispers and cautionary tales. Fear curled in her stomach, but beneath it, something else. A spark of longing. The negotiations were brief, more of a joke to the nobles than a serious transaction. They expected the guest to grow bored of his new acquisition, to discard her once he realized she was nothing more than a well-trained servant. But he did not. That night, for the first time in her life, the chains were removed from her wrists. She stared at them, uncomprehending. "You are free," he told her. She did not know what to do with those words. They were too large, too impossible to hold. He took her from the estate, leading her away from the only home she had ever known. The city beyond was overwhelming. Colors, sounds, scents that she had never experienced. Her hands clenched at the fabric of the simple cloak he had given her, trying to anchor herself. Days passed, then weeks. He never gave her orders, never treated her as less than an equal. He taught her his language, his customs, answered her questions with patience. He told her his name, Elias, and when he asked if she wished to choose one for herself, she hesitated. A name meant identity, meant something beyond servitude. It was too much, too soon. But he never pressed her. He only smiled and said, "One day, when you're ready." She did not understand him. Kindness was foreign, an enigma she could not decipher. She waited for cruelty, for punishment, for the inevitable reveal of a hidden motive. But it never came. Instead, he treated her as though she were precious, something to be protected rather than owned. The days turned into months, and the world became less frightening. She learned to laugh, to speak without fear of retribution. She discovered small joys, warm bread in the morning, the feeling of sun on her skin, the sound of the sea in the distance. And slowly, the fear that had lived in her bones for so long began to fade. Elias never asked for anything in return. He gave without expectation, offered without demands. And one evening, as they sat beneath the vast sky, she turned to him and spoke the name she had chosen for herself. Lyra. His smile was warm. Lyra, it suits you. She had not realized how much she wanted to hear her name spoken with affection until that moment. Something in her chest ached. Something she had kept locked away for too long. Time passed, and the bond between them deepened. She no longer flinched at his touch, no longer hesitated before speaking her thoughts. He was patient, never rushing, never demanding more than she was willing to give. And slowly, she came to understand that what she felt for him was something she had never been allowed to feel before. Love terrified her. Love was not meant for people like her, for those who had been broken and shaped by chains. But Elias never treated her as broken. To him, she was whole, and when he asked her, softly, gently, if she would stay by his side, not as a servant, not as something to be owned, but as his wife, she could not find it in herself to say no. The idea was overwhelming, but the thought of being without him was far worse. She had spent her life in darkness, and Elias had been the first to show her the light. He had given her freedom, but more than that, he had given her a place to belong. Their wedding was simple, witnessed only by those who had come to care for them. She wore no jewels, no silks, only the quiet certainty that she was wanted, not for what she could offer, but for who she was. And as Elias took her hands in his, she no longer felt the phantom weight of chains on her wrists. For the first time in her life, she was truly free.